Welcome back to Court TV Live, along with Kelly Craft and Ted Rollins. If you're just joining us, Nick Reiner appearing in a courtroom in Los Angeles for his arraignment, and we expected that he would be alongside Alan Jackson, his attorney, who was there the first court appearance. But according to TMZ, Alan Jackson has withdrawn from this case, and the family apparently is going to be releasing a statement in terms of why, after this proceeding is over, still going on there at the courthouse in downtown LA.
Still with us, Marie Pereira, criminal defense attorney. Marie, just taking a look at just some of the things that are online about this. This is breaking news. And so Alan Jackson had come out and he was going to be representing Nick. We were expecting Nick Reiner to enter a plea today, but now we're hearing this is, a major change in the case.
I'm not surprised, because when you hire someone, they go to court, you file a notice of appearance. That notice says that person's going to be your attorney. Now, if the person had a retainer agreement and you can't pay up, nobody works for free. He has the right to go to court and be officially withdrawn from the case. I'm surprised that it was that easy. Because in my world, as a defense attorney, once you do the notice of appearance, you say, this is my client. So for them to just allow him to just get off the case like that without providing the court with an explanation is surprising to me. Because in any normal situation, once you file a notice of appearance and you put your name on that defendant's name with the docket number, you really have to have a reason on the record, not just I'm withdrawing from the case. Yeah, it has to be more than that.
Presumably that's what's going on right now, we're at a disadvantage. We're getting tidbits from TMZ, which it's frankly very reliable in terms of courts, and especially Los Angeles. They have that lockdown, but we don't know everything yet. We'll find out soon enough. Let's talk about the case in general. He murdered his parents. I mean, it's very evident. The evidence is there. No one is saying that he didn't, right? Even from the very beginning here, even Alan Jackson we're talking more generically about what's next. And so, what is next? What should happen to Nick Reiner? I mean, if he wasn't Nick Reiner, if he was Nick Ferguson from LA, whose parents were no names, he'd be sitting in the Twin Towers, but he'd be on his way to either San Quentin or, Mule Creek.
Well, whoever he is and whatever his last name is, he still has the presumption of innocence. So he's innocent until proven guilty with very little reasonable doubt, right? That hasn't happened yet. So I want to say, when you say, he murdered his parents, we're assuming he murdered his parents, but there's still
only because of the amount of seeming evidence that of course, he's innocent until proven guilty.
Yes.
But Nick Reiner murdered his parents. Let's be honest.
There still could be a defense, though, because sometimes there are homicides that are justified. We don't know enough about the case. We're going according to what we hear. We don't know the exact results from the autopsies. We hear there were throats slashed. We hear people were stabbed in bed. We hear that there wasn't like a fight. It seemed more like an execution. That's what we're hearing. But until the case goes to trial and all of the evidence is released through discovery between defense and prosecution, we don't know. We don't know if there is a defense of he didn't understand what he was doing, that he's maybe not guilty by reason of insanity. He didn't have the ability to form judgment between right and wrong at the time. Maybe he was so high on drugs that he was impaired, because it's on record that he struggled with substance abuse. Not to say that in and of itself it would get him off the hook, but there are lesser charges when you do it and you don't know what you're doing, or you were impaired by drugs. Nothing has played out yet. So whether or not he's Nick Reiner or Nick Jones, he still enjoys the presumption of innocence, and they still have to prove their case against him, all of the elements beyond a reasonable doubt.
And we keep getting more and more updates. So really what now TMZ is saying, their sources are saying that a public defender is going to step in.
Okay.
For now, the case is going to be continued. Nick will not enter a plea. We were thinking that that was going to take place today. So also we're getting an update from the Associated Press. Nick Reiner appeared behind glass in a custody area of a Los Angeles courtroom. He was wearing his jail garb and had his hair shaved. So this is according to people that were inside or watching this from Los Angeles. So the attorneys went into the judge's chambers to confer before his case ended up being called. So just getting some more updates on it from right now, Marie. So just a surprise, because I believe, we have some sound from when Alan Jackson came out and was going to represent Nick. I think we have that queued up. Why don't we go ahead and play that? We can talk about that on the other side.
I just have a couple of quick words. First of all, and most importantly, this is a devastating tragedy that has befallen the Reiner family. We all recognize that. Our hearts go out to the entire Reiner family. There are very, very complex and serious issues that are associated with this case. These need to be thoroughly, but very carefully dealt with and examined and looked at and analyzed. We ask that during this process you allow the system to move forward in the way that it was designed to move forward. Not with a rush to judgment, not with jumping to conclusions, but with restraint and with dignity and with the respect that this system and this process deserves and that the family deserves. So with that, we are set for January 7th for an arraignment. That's the next court date. And that's all I have to say at this point. There may be more at some other point, but today we're going to rest on where we stand procedurally, which is this was the continuance of arraignment. Nothing happened today substantively. We'll be back for an arraignment in the same department on the 7th of January. We'll see you then.
Yeah, so Marie, we heard Alan Jackson there talking about this, talking about it being a complex case. He was saying a lot of parts to this.
Like I was saying, it could be not guilty by reason of insanity. And I know it sounds crazy. It could be self-defense, because we do not know what happened inside there. And we can't go according to everything we hear from TMZ. We have to give the man an opportunity to lodge a defense. But you see how gung-ho he was, and now you're saying the case is probably going to a public defender. I want to tell the people, just because it's a public defender doesn't mean that it's not top-tier representation, because remember, Philip Dubé used to be a public defender. I think Philip needs to come out of retirement and deal with this case. Because
in that office. He is the walking encyclopedia. He is our version of AI.
Most of the great defense attorneys come from the PD background or a prosecutorial background, and you get that training every single day in court. You have cases every single day, and so PDs definitely can be amazing. So, Marie, thanks. We're going to squeeze in a break. We're going to have more of this breaking news out of Los Angeles. Alan Jackson withdrawing from the Nick Reiner case. We'll be right back.
School shooting that broke hearts around the country and broke trust with law enforcement.
Now, the officer sworn to protect those students faces a jury.
The Uvalde school massacre trial. Live coverage today on Court TV. 8 hours of back-to-back true crime cases every Saturday.
This is crazy.
On America's original true crime obsession. 48 hours on Court TV. Saturday starting at 4/3 Central on Court TV.
Welcome back to Court TV Live, along with Kelly Craft and Ted Rollins. If you're just joining us, breaking news out of Los Angeles. Nick Reiner was supposed to be arraigned today, enter a plea, and we were speculating all morning, would it be not guilty by reason of insanity, thinking that his attorney Alan Jackson would be at his side in the courtroom. Well, the breaking news is that Alan Jackson is withdrawing from this case.
Yeah, big news out in Los Angeles. You know, you just go back to when this happened. I remember being at home with my parents and then hearing this on the news that, you know, the mom and dad had been stabbed, and you think, oh my gosh, what happened here? And then the information starts coming out about the son. Then you fast forward, then we hear that Alan Jackson is going to represent him, which, of course, all of our viewers are very familiar with Alan Jackson because we just came off of the Karen Reed case not too long ago where he had that successful victory with Karen Reed. But now the breaking news, he has withdrawn from this case. And we're hearing from TMZ that in a little bit we will hear the family is going to be issuing a statement, the Reiner family, as to a reason as to why this departure is taking place.
And the judge in this case is not allowing live streaming. So there was, according to people in the courtroom, the Associated Press and others had representatives there. They went back into chambers before the hearing got underway. However, Nick Reiner is not expected to enter a plea today, and in the absence of Alan Jackson, it is our understanding from reporting, including TMZ, that a public defender will take over this case. And again, to your point, we'll learn more very soon because when this concludes, A, we'll get the feed, whatever did happen in open court, and then B, we're expecting that family statement with more clarity as to the reasons why Alan Jackson is off the case.
Yeah, we do have a background package on this, a background story, just kind of getting people up to speed as to the situation, as to what had transpired before. Why don't we go ahead and play that, and we'll talk about it on the other side.
Sunday, December 14th, around 3:30 p.m., Los Angeles firefighters responded to a 911 call at the Brentwood home of Hollywood filmmaker Rob Reiner and his wife, Michele.
Upon arrival, they determined that there were 2 deceased individuals inside of the residence.
Rob Reiner, the son of comedy legend Carl Reiner, catapulted to fame in the 1970s as Michael Stivic, Archie Bunker's hippie son-in-law on the hit television series All in the Family.
All right, put it there.
He went on to become a prolific director of such films as This Is Spinal Tap, Stand By Me, and When Harry Met Sally.
I came here tonight because when you realize you want to spend the rest of your life with somebody, you want the rest of your life to start as soon as possible.
Reiner and his wife, Hollywood producer Michele Singer Reiner, were found in their home fatally stabbed. The Reiner family confirmed the deaths in a statement posted on Variety.com. It is with profound sorrow that we announce the tragic passing of Michele and Rob Reiner. We are heartbroken by this sudden loss, and we ask for privacy during this unbelievably difficult time. The Reiners married in 1989 and had 3 children together, sons Jake, Nick, and daughter Romy. Nick Reiner has spoken openly through the years about his issues with drug addiction and homelessness. In 2016, he appeared in this clip, currently circulating on social media, with his father. It was a panel discussion promoting the movie Being Charlie, which was partially inspired by Rob Reiner's experiences parenting Nick.
The whole process for me, I can just speak for myself, it did make me understand him a lot more, and I think it made me a better father. Hopefully it did. If your kid is going through rough times, you know, the parent your main job is to keep your child safe.
As police, media, and onlookers converged on the home, sightings were reported of Reiner's friends and collaborators, Larry David and Billy Crystal. Tributes poured in from Hollywood and beyond. Carrie Elwes, who starred in Reiner's cult classic The Princess Bride, posted no words. Jerry O'Connell was one of the child actors featured in Stand By Me, and he tweeted, "Love you, Rob, sincerely." Former President Barack Obama wrote in part, "Beneath all of the stories he produced was a deep belief in the goodness of people and a lifelong commitment to putting that belief in action."
All right, Marie Pereira still with us. What does logistically happen here when you have an attorney withdraw, no arraignment today? They'll just set a new date for that and give the new attorney, whoever it is, time?
Yes, the attorney's going to have to meet him, interview him, see if he's okay with him being assigned as the attorney. Although for the most part, if you're indigent, And that's who, the type of person that gets a free attorney, a public defender, is someone who has no money to pay. Because in America, if you're accused of something that has to do with your freedom, a criminal case, if you can't afford an attorney, one will be appointed to you. And you don't really have much say in who it is unless there's a big difference and meeting of the minds. You get the attorney that they appoint for you.
But the high-profile case, you can be assured it's going to be someone with experience. We're going to get a break. Marie, stand by. When we come back, more Nick Reiner, plus that Washington State trial. Busy Wednesday at Court TV. Welcome back to Court TV Live, along with Kelly Craft and Ted Rollins. We're reacting to the breaking news out of Los Angeles. Nick Reiner, who was supposed to be arraigned formally today in a Los Angeles courtroom and represented by Alan Jackson, is going to do neither. He is not going to be arraigned today. That's going to be pushed back. And according to multiple sources and reporting out of L.A., Alan Jackson is off the case, no longer representing Nick Reiner.
Yeah, this breaking news just took place a short time ago, and we are awaiting a statement from the Reiner family as to the reason. TMZ reporting that a short time from now, the Reiner family is going to be issuing a statement or talking about the reason as to why this departure has taken place.
Let's bring in our guest for the hour to get some reaction. She is joining us now from New Jersey, Livingston, New Jersey, Crystal Pettiford. Chris, what's your take on this high-profile case, obviously, high-profile lawyer now out, Alan Jackson withdrawing?
It's kind of surprising that he's withdrawing on such short notice, right when the arraignment is being scheduled. Obviously, you can assume that there may be some disagreements on how the case should be handled or how he should plea. Otherwise, I can't imagine a reason why on the date of arraignment he would withdraw as counsel.
Well, yeah, I mean, Crystal, that's a great point, because that's what we were expecting to take place today, him to enter some sort of plea. And so if there was going to be discussions as to a departure, discussions as to, and I'm speculating here that maybe there was some sort of financial agreement that now has fallen through the cracks, you would have thought that you would have heard that they would have made a decision about this prior to today. So, maybe it's more than that. Maybe it has nothing to do with finances. Again, we don't know. We will find out shortly. But yes, for it to happen today, on the day that we're supposed to be hearing how he is going to enter in regard to his plea, that was kind of a surprise.
Yes, definitely a surprise. On the eve of an arraignment, it can only be assumed that it probably could be financial, but I would think it's more so something to do with how they should proceed.
We've been talking about Philip DeBay sort of because he was the lead public defender in Los Angeles County for many years and has just retired from that position. He's, still a lawyer, still practicing, but now no longer part of the office. And he's in Mexico right now, and he just texted me, and he's chiming in, and he brings up the probate situation, saying that under California Probate Code 250, a beneficiary to a trust estate cannot inherit if they murder them, basically. There's no money to pay for the counsel. That it may have something to do with that. Again, we'll find out. But, if you're an heir, you can't murder the person that is going to be, you're going to get money from, and then use that money to represent you at trial. So could it be about money, Crystal, at the end of the day?
I mean, that's always a possibility, but Mr. Jackson is a very experienced attorney. I'm sure he's fully aware that Nick Reiner would not have been able to reap the benefits or of any money willed to him or left to him as a result of his parents' death. So I think that would have been something that would have been discussed prior to the date of arraignment.
Yeah, absolutely, Crystal. And we're going to stick with this story because we're hearing that we're going to get some more updates here momentarily, maybe a live feed from Los Angeles. And of course, as soon as we get that, we're going to bring that to our viewers. But yes, I mean, going back to just what we were talking about, you know, when you hire an attorney, there's usually an agreement. This is how we're going to get paid. These are my fees. This is what, you know, we're going to do going forward for our payments, the retainer. And so then, and we would know that. Alan Jackson would know that, just exactly what Philip Dubé was texting you about. So there should have been some sort of knowledge already behind them as to what the financial situation was. So that's what makes me think, Crystal, along the lines of what you're saying, that maybe there was some sort of different reason as to why exactly this took place. I know last hour when we had Marie Pereira on, I was talking maybe because of case management. She was saying no, that's probably not a possibility because he would have known when he took the case. So I don't know. I mean, again, we're just speculating here, but Crystal, any more thoughts as to that? I mean, what do you think about case management? Sometimes you take something on, then you start going into it and you're like, whoa, I have so much on my plate. He has that high profile case out in Los Angeles about that young man who was driving along Pacific Coast Highway. That one's a huge case. He just came off the Karen Reed case, and that victory there, obviously, that one's behind him now. But obviously, he's a very busy man.
Well, of course, but he's also very knowledgeable, and he's able to manage his cases effectively. Otherwise, he wouldn't be so successful. So I wouldn't think it would be a case management issue. Again, completely assuming. I can only assume that maybe based on it being previously adjourned, there wasn't understanding that there may have been a guilty plea. And it would be more about sentencing. Maybe there was a shift in that, and therefore now the fees associated with someone entering an early plea are much different than the fees for a defendant planning to defend themselves from the allegations. So I can only assume that it has something to do with that, and maybe the trajectory of the defense has since changed.
Yeah, Crystal, and that's an excellent point, because yes, if Alan Jackson is going to go and come up with a defense and use his skills as an attorney and, you know, talk about not guilty by reason of insanity, and then all of a sudden there is a shift where we're going to come today, we're going to just say guilty, we're not even going to proceed, yeah, that would definitely be a difference in finances.
Yeah, if indeed, you know, Nick Reiner himself didn't want to participate and go a certain way, that might have been part of it. Again, we'll get more from that family statement. We're also expecting the feed of what actually happened in court today in open court. They all went into chambers shortly after the case was called, but the judge in this case didn't allow us to live stream. So we're sort of waiting for that procedural event to take place where we'll be getting that feed along with everybody else at the same time. And as soon as we do, we'll pass that along. The Nick Reiner's arraignment is delayed until February.
Yeah, so that's new information. We just have heard now. We thought
the Associated Press.
We thought it was going to be taking place today, that he was going to be entering a plea, and now we're hearing just some breaking news that now that has been delayed until February. Obviously, understandably, it was delayed as of today. We just hadn't had that date yet, so that's some breaking news. Now we'll have that, and we'll bring that to our viewers when it does happen, about a month from now.
Yeah. Again, we're waiting that feed from the court. And Crystal, procedurally, now you have according to multiple reports, including TMZ, the Public Defender's Office representing Nick Reiner. Some people may think, oh gosh, Public Defender's Office, there are extremely competent public defenders. And in Los Angeles, a city of that size, they are going to appoint someone with experience to handle the complexities of a high-profile trial. He's going to still get good representation, correct?
Absolutely. There are many public defenders that are top tier. They do this on a regular basis. They handle cases of comprehensive magnitudes all the time. Just because a person is a public defender, that doesn't make them any less qualified than a privately retained attorney.
No, absolutely not. I mean, I remember back when I was working just as a, assistant state's attorney back in Illinois, and when I was first starting, you're handed so many files, and you have to go in every day and switch gears from this case to that case to that case. And public defenders have that same kind of background, same kind of training, and many of them go on to be very successful defense attorneys. But that's what we're hearing, that in the meantime, Nick Reiner is going to be appointed a public defender. If he then will end up getting private counsel. Crystal, kind of talk about that process. When someone is deemed indigent and you have to fill out, I mean, at least when I was practicing, they had to fill out the paperwork saying about what they have for their assets, and then the judge makes a decision as to if they are able to be appointed a public defender, or if then they have to go to the next step and hire private counsel. But kind of talk about that process. Right now, Nick is going with the PD, and then eventually maybe he will go back to having private counsel.
Would actually be surprised if he didn't go back to getting private counsel, but his process would be no different from anyone else. There would be there would be an analysis of his financial means and ability to pay a private attorney. If he falls within the required guidelines of a person who is eligible for a public defender, then he would get a public defender. And as you previously stated, they're gonna appoint a public defender that is very experienced in handling cases of this magnitude. It would be the same process for him that it would be for anyone else. There's, I don't believe he was working at the time based on everything that's been out in the media, so I don't see why he would not qualify for the assistance of a public defender.
Crystal, let's talk about the case against Nick Reiner. It seems to be substantial in terms of he is the one that took the lives of his parents. Was it strangely self-defense? Was he under the influence of something? Was he coherent? All of these questions we don't know. We don't know a lot. But we do know that he seems to be the person that took their lives. What possible defenses really are there moving forward in this case, from what we know?
The primary defense, it seems, based on what's out there, is he's probably going to go with something related to his mental health. From what we understand, he's been struggling with some mental health issues. Maybe he's going to try to say he wasn't in his right state of mind at the time of the killings, and that it wasn't premeditated. Otherwise, I don't see what defense. I don't believe self-defense will ever come into the equation, because there's been nothing in the news that his parents were in any way violent toward him. Everything leads to the fact they've been loving and trying to guide him through his rehabilitation phases of his life. So I don't think self-defense will come into play. If anything, I think there will be some affirmative defense of his mental health and incapacity.
Yeah, I would think, yeah, that's probably true. I'd like to go ahead and play that when Alan Jackson took over this case, he came out there on the courthouse steps and he talked about the complexity of this case. He talked about it being complex. When you first hear about the case, you're like, oh, okay. You hear the parents were stabbed, then you hear that the son is involved in some way, and then you have Alan Jackson coming out and talking about the case being complex. At first thought, Crystal, I'll bring you in instead of playing that sound, but at first thought you think, well, how complex can it really be? The parents are dead now, they were stabbed to death, and it's coming out as information as to the son is responsible. But you'd hear a very seasoned defense attorney come out and say the case is quite complex. What are your thoughts on that?
I think when an attorney says the case isn't that complex, it's quite complex, my apologies. In a matter like this, I think it's to stop the public and potential jurors from rushing to judgment. If you make it simplistic, then we jump to the conclusion automatically that this was a person who was out of control and killed his parents. But when you want to make it a broader issue, possibly mental health or something else, then you want to keep an open mind and you want the jury to focus on the complexities and what led up to these specific events. If you make it any less complex, then the writing is on the wall that he killed his parents, and that's the end of it.
Yeah, good point. And again, that arraignment we were expecting to take place today now has been delayed until February. So a lot of moving parts here.
Yeah, and apparently the feed that is coming out of Los Angeles of the hearing that was on the record. There are some complications with that. So let's do this. We'll get a break. We'll regroup. Probably head back to Washington, watch that until we get more from the Reiner case. We are still expecting that family statement, which should have some clues as to why Alan Jackson is off. So as soon as we get that too, we'll share it with you. But stay where you are. Busy day here at Court TV. Don't go anywhere.
School shooting that broke hearts around the country and broke trust with law enforcement.
Now, the officer sworn to protect those students faces a jury.
The Uvalde School Massacre Trial. Live coverage today on Court TV.
Tonight on Closing Arguments, Nick Reiner arraigned on charges that he murdered his mother and father. We'll show you everything you may have missed as we preview what is next.
Closing Arguments with Vinny Politan. Tonight at 8, 7 Central. Only on Court TV.
Welcome back to Court TV Live. A busy day. We've been monitoring what's going on in Southern California, where Nick Reiner was to be arraigned today. And Alan Jackson, his attorney, high-profile attorney, has withdrawn from the case. That arraignment's been pushed till late February 23rd.
Yeah, and we're just getting some information now as to what the family is saying. They did issue a brief comment saying that they have the utmost trust in the legal process and will not comment further on matters relating to the legal proceedings. And they went on a source. This is a source told the New York Times, so this is according to the New York Times. The change had nothing to do with Alan's performance and that he had been a pro. So new information there. We had reported earlier that Alan Jackson has withdrawn from the case, and now we're hearing just some of this general information. Of course, they are saying nothing to do with Alan's performance and that he had been a pro.
And the public defender, Kimberly Green, 19 years of experience, apparently has been appointed to the case. So she'll be along his side when they are back in court at the 23rd. We are still expecting that feed from the courthouse. There's been some technical problems with that. So nobody has it yet. As soon as it is released, we'll pass it along to you. But the breaking news today, obviously, is that Nick Reiner not arraigned yet, and Alan Jackson is out.